Hey Otto, thanks for joining us. Still waiting for the public to arrive. Good evening, Supervisor Lusk. Welcome. We're going to get started in just a few minutes.
Sure. Thank you very much.
Would you like to say a few words in the beginning?
Sure. That'd be fine.
Great, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Hmm.
All right, let's get started. Welcome to this community conversation on active transportation, specifically for the Lead District, as part of the ActiveFairfax Transportation Plan. First, I would like to let you know that this meeting is being recorded and will be available on the website within a day or two if you would like to share the recording. And first, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Nicole Winans with the Fairfax County Department of Transportation. I'm an active transportation planner and the project manager for this plan. I would also like to introduce my colleague, Lauren Delmar, who is going to host the meeting today and help me with the question and answer session, as well as Chris Wells just joined, who is our program manager for the active transportation program for Fairfax County. And I would like to recognize Supervisor Rodney Lusk, who would like to say a few words before we kick off. Supervisor Lusk?
Yes, thank you very much. I just want to welcome everyone to our program here this evening. It's an opportunity for you to provide us some feedback. And I'll say this topic is one that's very important, thinking about, pedestrian safety, trails, and other pedestrian facilities. We want to hear your thoughts, and we also want you to become aware of where the county is in terms of provisioning these facilities. And again, just want you to feel free that if there are ever any questions or concerns that you have here in the district, that you can certainly reach out to my office. And again, thank you for being a part of our program tonight, and look forward to hearing the feedback. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can you still hear me? I had to unplug my phones.
I can still hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you. The system gave
Sure.
me a warning that my headphones would be turned off. Great,
Okay.
thank you.
Sure.
Wonderful. So let's talk about the agenda for tonight. So first we will go over a few logistics for the meeting, and then dive right into active transportation. What is active transportation, and what are active transportation facilities? As well as have some time to ask questions and share your thoughts on your experience walking and biking in Fairfax County. So there will be a section on the pedestrian experience, the bicycle experience, as well as a hiking and mountain biking and equestrian experience. And then we will continue look into the future. So what is this plan about, which will plan for active transportation for the next 25 to 50 years. And then we will end the meeting with the next steps for this plan, as well as an open discussion and question and answer session. But first on the logistics, as I mentioned, this meeting is recorded, and the recording will be available at the following link, as you can see here, on the fairfaxcounty.gov website. You can search for ActiveFairfax. That's usually the easiest way of finding the page. To ask a question, please use the WebEx question and answer feature. And you can do so by opening the question and answer window and typing in your question. And you can do so throughout the presentation. And to answer a question that we are asking, please use the chat feature that WebEx is providing. You can open the chat window and type in your question. And you should, the Q&A window will go away and will be replaced by the chat at that point. So hopefully it won't be confusing. You can also ask or answer a question verbally. To do so, please raise your hand. If you're on your computer, click the hand symbol on the bottom right of your screen. If you're on the phone, please press *3 to raise your hand. All right, let's dive right into what is active transportation. Active transportation is really includes all forms on non-motorized, self-propelled travel for recreation or transportation purposes, such as walking, riding a bike or horse, hiking, running, and rolling. And rolling could be in a wheelchair, on a scooter, a stroller, or a similar device. There is an exception to the self-propelled non-motorized rule. The official definition does include electric micromobility vehicles, such as electric scooters, electric bikes, and electric skateboards, and similar small electric devices. What are active transportation facilities? So let's look at the pedestrian facilities, the bicycle facilities, and the hiking, mountain biking, equestrian facilities separately, because they all differ. And we get started with the pedestrian facilities. So you're all familiar with sidewalks, if you have walked around Fairfax County. On the left, you can see the more urban sidewalks, which are a little bit wider and encourage social strolling and lingering, and they often have some sort of building frontage right next to them. And then we have suburban sidewalks, which are a little bit more narrow. They're usually 5 feet wide, and that's the minimum standard to accommodate a wheelchair. They're usually just the bare infrastructure. Sometimes there's street lighting, but street trees and pedestrian lighting is mostly provided in urban areas. A more challenging question is, what is a crosswalk? So there are some obvious crosswalks, like you can see on the left side here in the graphic. The crosswalk labeled number 1 is a standard marked crosswalk with 2 parallel lines. Then what's labeled number 2 is what is called a high visibility crosswalk. Some people call it a zebra crosswalk. Those are located usually in front of schools or near metro stations, and increase the visibility of pedestrians a little bit. But then there's a third crosswalk, and it's called an unmarked crosswalk. So any leg of an intersection, even if there is no marking, it's still legally a crosswalk. On the right side here, you see a crosswalk that is not at an intersection. And this one is called a mid-block crosswalk. And those are usually highlighted with a higher visibility crosswalk to increase the attention of drivers and pedestrians could cross here. They also enhance crosswalks. On the left here is a crosswalk with something that's called a pedestrian refuge island. It gives pedestrians that are crossing the ability to wait in the middle and cross one direction of travel at a time. So it's a little bit of a safe harbor there. And on the right is a new technology device that is available to us, which is called a rectangular rapid flashing beacon, or RFB. And those have bright flashing lights that can be activated by a pedestrian. However, unlike a signalized intersection, it does not give the pedestrian right away. They still have to wait for a safe gap in traffic, but particularly at night, it's helpful if they want to cross, that the light turns on and approaching drivers are notified that there is a pedestrian in the street. And here are the signalized crosswalks. So on the left is the standard crosswalk that you've probably all used before. You press a button and you will get the walk signal, traffic will stop, and you can safely cross. The device on the right is also new technology. This is called the pedestrian hybrid beacon, and those are designed to make those mid-block crossings safer. So these devices also stop traffic when a pedestrian pushes a button and they can safely cross. The images here show a grade separated crossing, which can be a pedestrian bridge or pedestrian tunnel. So the one on the left is a pedestrian only bridge. There are no cars on this bridge. This one is across the toll road near Wolf Trap. And the image on the right is a trail crossing under a busy street through a tunnel in Reston. So now we would like to open it up for discussion. We would like to hear what is your experience walking, running, or strolling in Fairfax County? So you could type your answer in the chat, or if you would like to speak, please raise your hand. If you're calling in, press *3 to raise your hand. We'll give it a few minutes to see if anyone would like to speak. So you can talk about anything you would like, that your experience walking around Fairfax County, anything you've noticed, anything you would like to see different. But you would need to raise your hand in order to be unmuted. I don't see any questions. Lauren, do you see any questions in the Q&A or in the chat?
Yeah, we switched to chat and we don't have any questions in the chat, and I don't see any raised hands either at this point.
Okay. Well, then we move on to the next topic. But we can always address your questions at the end as well, if you would like to wait until the end of the presentation. So let's talk about bicycle facilities. Bicycle facilities can come in a great variety of infrastructure improvements, or, in this case of a shared street, it's just a street. There's no special improvement needed. It's a quiet neighborhood street that doesn't have many cars on it. The speeds are pretty low, so it's pretty safe and comfortable for people riding bikes or scooters to share the road. On the right here is a what is called a shared lane marking. Those are being used on roads that are pretty narrow, and cars and bikes have to share, just like in the image on the left there. But there are higher speeds and higher travel volume, so more cars on the road, and so it's an extra alert for the drivers that bikes are expected in the roadway, and they're not supposed to be on the hugging the right side. They should be traveling in the center of the lane or near the center of the lane in order to stay safe, and drivers will need to pass crossing the double yellow line in order to pass the cyclist. Then these are pretty common in Fairfax County. You may have seen them. Those are just bike lanes, standard bike lanes on the left with one stripe and a bike symbol in it. And on the right, if you have a little bit more space, there can also be a buffer added between the car and the bike lanes to give a little bit more protection from and distance from the drivers. But many people prefer to be off-road, so there are bike facilities that that they're not located within the street. So one of the basic ones we have in Fairfax County are so-called shared use paths. So on the left here, you can see a more urban setting where a shared use path can mix with pedestrian traffic in a nice setting with urban amenities next to it. But then most of the trails in Fairfax County are actually along roads. So you can see one here crossing, going along a quite busy street, crossing this interchange. So they're really safe facilities. But then at the intersections, the crosswalk design matters in order to keep trail users safe. And then our most popular trail, I would say, is probably the one on the right here, which is a paved trail through nature, far away from any traffic, and very enjoyable for both transportation and recreational purposes. A new facility that we have in our toolkit, and we don't have one yet fully built out in Fairfax County, though we are working on multiple of these. Those are called separated bikeways or cycle tracks, and they can be either two-way on one side of the street or both sides of the street. Just like a shared use path, but the difference here is that the pedestrians actually have their own space. So it's not a shared space. It's really a designated space for bikes and a designated space for peds away from vehicular traffic. And the one-way facility is just like regular bike lanes, except they're behind the curb. And the question is, why are we doing all these different type of facility, and which facility really serves what cyclists? So this graphic I like because it really shows that, that it does make a difference which facilities we select for what type of road. So on the left here, you see this one lone guy who's riding his bike on a narrow path across this canyon, and he's like, yeah, I can do this. It's not too bad. But all these other people here that have bikes and would like to ride are like, yeah, no way. I'm not crossing using that little path, and I rather don't bike at all. However, if we are providing a safe space that's separated and there's no risk of falling off, all these people, including children, are able to bike on it, and they really like it. But the good news is that the one cyclist that was previously fine crossing this area here on the narrow string is also happy because he can still ride. So this is really serving a much greater part of the population. And this kind of breaks it down by percentages of what type of riders we have in Fairfax County. So the guy on the right here is the highly confident rider. So that's the one that would go over the canyon on the string. They're very experienced and don't necessarily need designated bike facilities. So if they're well designed, they'll appreciate using them. But it's a small percentage of the population. So somewhat confident riders make up another small part of the population. They're the ones that really do prefer bike lanes and do ride to work and to do groceries, sometimes don't own cars, access transit, but they wouldn't necessarily share the lane with heavy vehicle traffic. But the biggest part of the population is what we call the interested but concerns. It's more than half of the population. And those are beginner cyclists, people of all ages and abilities that really prefer that separation from traffic. And that's why we are kind of moving away from the on-street bike lanes and shared spaces to a more protected facility to really serve a greater amount of the population. So let's see if you would like to share your experience riding a bike, scooter, or other small vehicle in Fairfax County. So to do so, please type your answer or question in the chat. And if you would like to speak, please raise your hand. And if you're calling in, please press *3 to raise your hand. I don't see any raised hands or anyone entering anything in the chat. I just want to confirm that the technology is working. If someone could just raise their hand, just so I can see that it works. Okay, thank you. You can take it down if you don't want to speak, that's fine. All right, we have a Q&A question, I hear. So let me see if I can see that. Lauren, would you be able to read it to me? Because I don't see the Q&A.
Yes, the majority of VDOT streets in the county are unsafe for vulnerable users. It will take decades and a lot of capital projects to implement permanent fixes. Will the county lobby VDOT to use short-term, cheaper alternative solutions like planters and flexi posts to improve safety and separation of vulnerable users from drivers sooner?
Thank you. That's a very good question. Yes, there are, and that I didn't show them in this presentation, but there are cheaper ways to retrofit roads with protected bike lanes, for example. So, for example, if you have a buffered bike lanes, those could be retrofitted with a vertical object like a barrier of some sort or a flex post. And we have worked with VDOT on getting a permit to do so, and we can. There are pros and cons to these. For example, the flex posts are could be taken out by a snowplow, while some of the other opportunities to protect the bike lane are definitely need some sort of maintenance program. So we are able to do those. But we currently are doing the full-fledged facility, but there's definitely opportunities to provide some guidance on what would be appropriate in Fairfax County to use. So we have a small toolkit of these innovative intermediate facilities available to us, but it will need to come with some sort of maintenance funding for the county to be able to maintain those facilities, as they're not as durable as a concrete full-fledged facility that we can build through a capital project.
We also have a comment in the chat. It's very difficult to bike around the county. Trails and bike lanes aren't connected or easy to navigate. It takes a lot of planning and courage to bike here.
Thank you for that comment. Yeah, please share away with your experience. Depending on where you're in the lead district, it may vary, and we would like to hear from you if it's working for you, or if it's not working for you. And I would also like to welcome Toby Shatney, who just joined, who is the director of the Fairfax County Department of Transportation.
Thanks, Nicole. Happy to be here this evening, and thank you to everybody who's joined us. Your input is very important in planning our future bike and pedestrian networks. So please feel free to join into the conversation either through the chat or through raising your hand, and share with your neighbors and your friends the survey, because that will be very important to get a whole bunch of feedback to help improve the plan going forward. So thanks, Nicole, and the rest of the team.
Thank you, Tom. All right, are there any more questions or experience you would like to share on biking? I see Alexis posted into the chat, there isn't bike parking at most shopping centers or even at some county parks like Hunley Meadows. That's a really great comment. Thank you. We will, the county is working on bike parking. There's limited funding available and a great need. So both the Park Authority and FCDOT have done a survey of our bike parking needs and are raising funds to address the parking situation at our public facilities. But this project will make some recommendations for the private sector as well. We do have bicycle parking guidelines available right now, but they are in need of an update, and that will be part of this plan as well. If there are no additional questions, we can move on to the hiking, mountain biking, and equestrian facilities. And those are pretty straightforward, very similar. They are basically trails that are mostly through nature, that are have a natural surface, and they're often a little bit more narrow than some of the other facilities you see. But they can also be wide depending on if it's also functioning as kind of like a more popular route that needs a little bit more room to navigate, like the Burke Lake Loop is one of our most popular facilities. So on the left here, you see what I believe is a cross-county trail, which is great for hiking. Equestrian uses of some of these trails. And mountain biking can be done on these soft surface trails, but also in specific mountain bike areas that can be hurdles or obstacles, I guess, for mountain bikers to use next to the path. We also have pump tracks, which serve different ages for beginners and experienced mountain bikers. So I want to ask here as well if anyone is interested in speaking about hiking or mountain biking or riding a horse in Fairfax County. Again, you can type your answer question in the chat, share your experience. And if you would like to speak, please raise your hand or press *3 to raise your hand if you're on the phone. I don't see any questions. So we'll move on to the next topic, which is complete streets. So complete streets it's a set terminology in the planning world, but what it refers to is a concept that streets are not just hard infrastructure, and they should serve all users. So they should be very comfortable and safe, not just for drivers, but also for people that are walking and biking. But then it's not just about safety, but it's also about comfort and experience, the general experience of walking along the corridor or biking along the corridor. So as you can see here on those two images, that's the same street. So on the left, you can see that yellow truck. That's the same yellow truck is on the right, but the experience of this corridor is very different. So on the left, you have a more car-centric street. There is something that looks like a bike lane, but there's no pedestrian facilities. There are no trees. So on the right here, you can see the same street enhanced with this, with just regular bike ped infrastructure, but also street trees. And you can really see how that enclosure of this corridor really increases the comfort of the pedestrians and cyclists. There's now shade. It helps slow down the travel speeds a little bit because it feels a little bit more enclosed. So it's just a very different experience, and that type of enhancement we call complete streets. So planning for the future. So let's dive a little bit into the project we are here to learn about today. So the ActiveFairfax Transportation Plan is basically merging multiple active transportation plans that the county currently has. So on the one hand, there is a countywide trails plan, which has been around since the 1970s, and it has been frequently updated. The last update is from 2018, but it does need a comprehensive overhaul to make sure it meets current standards. And we also have the Bicycle Master Plan, which was adopted in 2014, which has mostly on-street infrastructure, which means the shared roads, the bike lanes, the sharrows, those shared lane markings we learned about earlier. So those are all in the bicycle network. But there are a few shared use paths and cycle tracks as well, which were really important for the bike commuting to work or transit. And then we have something called special area plans, which are comprehensive plans that focus on a specific activity center, such as Reston or Tyson's, Annandale, McLean. So these little commercial or bigger commercial areas that need a different way of looking at transportation. So those roads are the complete streets in the county. You can see the image on the right here, the street trees in the road cross section. So those roads, a lot of new roads are in those activity centers where we used to have the super blocks. There's now a local road network planned that comes with active transportation infrastructure. But all those three plans don't necessarily talk to each other. So sometimes, in some cases, we will have 1, 2, or 3 different recommendations what the preferred active transportation facility or facilities should be. So this effort is tasked to make sure that we have one comprehensive recommendation for each location in Fairfax County. In addition, we have a regional trail network, which is not a comprehensive plan, but it's a regional effort led by the Capital Trails Coalition, which is a coalition of the jurisdictions surrounding Washington, D.C. and D.C. itself, as well as stakeholders like the National Park Service. And the goal is to create a network of trails that are connected throughout the region across the different jurisdictional borders. And it's a newer effort, a couple years old. And this is the map they created of the system. So Fairfax County is on the left there. You can see the different colors mean that the green is an existing trail, orange is a planned trail. And Fairfax County is doing pretty well on the existing trails that are designated to be part of this higher regional network. And the ActiveFairfax transportation plan will take a look at the trails in our network within our jurisdiction to make sure that those are the regional connection we want to see and add to it. So we know there's some gaps in there we would like to fill. So I spoke a little bit about the need for this active transportation plan update. Again, the inconsistencies between the different plans that the county already has, and that some of these facility design recommendations are outdated. So for example, some of the bike lanes that we have on some roads, we now know is not the best facilities for the most amount of people. So in that case, we would, for example, look at an off-street facility on a safer facility that is protected from traffic. And there are some new national guidelines that determine, how many vehicles can be on a road for it to still be comfortable for most people riding in a bike lane, or at what point we should switch to an off-street facility. So we have to look through our network and determine which is the most appropriate facility for the context that road is in. Also, though we have multiple comprehensive plans that deal with active transportation infrastructure, we don't have a lot of information about pedestrian-specific recommendations at, for example, at intersections, like all these crosswalks we talked about earlier. We right now take a case-by-case view at crosswalks to see what makes sense in that space, but we use a lot of internal knowledge that we have developed over the years, but we don't have necessarily policies in place that tell us, this is the best type of crosswalk for this type of location. At the local level, there's some national guidance and there's some state guidance, but it doesn't cover everything. For example, we don't have a recommendation or a policy that says crosswalk should be at 4 legs of the intersection, and what type of crosswalk should those be. So we will look at some of that, and then also provide specific guidance on safety and comfort, and that's where we come in with the complete streets concept. So, and what streets do we want to see this enhanced street environment that includes sidewalk lighting, for example, or trails lighting? Where do street trees really make a difference? For example, those streets that lead to an activity center. So we know inside the activity centers, we have some of these recommendations, but as soon as you leave that activity center, there's no enhanced infrastructure planned in our current comprehensive plans. And then we, as a county, have really moved towards active transportation as a really desirable program, in a sense, like really enhancing active transportation. Historically, the county has been planned very car-centric, 50 years ago. So lots of our older neighborhoods don't have really good active transportation facilities. The newer neighborhoods have often at least a sidewalk and a trail. So when the county went through their strategic plan, active transportation came out over and over. Also from an equity perspective, how do we get to our metro stations and the bus stop to travel to work, and how do we get around? So the project is broken currently into 2 phases. We're in phase 1, which focuses on collecting the data that we need to make these recommendations, do community outreach, which we are doing right now, to hear from our public and the stakeholders and the most vulnerable road users, about their experience and what we should focus on as part of this plan. we're also developing a strategic safety program plan. Pedestrian safety has been really an important topic for the Board of Supervisors, but also in general, recently with the pandemic, a lot of people being out and about, experiencing the county in a different way. And we definitely have gotten more calls and emails about safety concerns. So the strategic safety program could be a way of addressing the safety concerns in a forward-looking, comprehensive way, not just reacting to a fatality, so preventing it. Phase 2 of the project will then take the recommendations and the analysis, take the analysis and the data and the public feedback and use that information to develop recommendations for the network and for the programs that would be needed to support the use of the facilities. For example, Bike to Work Day is something that the county is hosting, or Bike to Park Day. So there are different events that could encourage use. And also look at implementation guidance. So we have a huge need in the county to improve our infrastructure. As we heard earlier, there's lack of connected networks, lack of bike parking. So what do we do first? So looking at different ways of prioritize the limited funding that we have as part of this project. And then the timeline for phase 1, where we're in right now, is we're closer to the end. So we started last July with all the policy analysis and data gathering, and are hoping to finish up phase 1 by July. And then we will hopefully be able to transition into phase 2 shortly after that. So now it's time again to share your thoughts. Please, if you would like to describe your own vision for active transportation in Fairfax County in the future, please type your answer in the chat, or if you'd like to speak, please raise your hand. If you're calling in, please press *3 to raise your hand.
Nicole, we have a question.
Sure.
Can you talk more about what is planned for the strategic safety program plan? It is so general, it is hard to know what is planned.
Sure, thank you for the question. So you may be familiar with the term Vision Zero. If you're not familiar, it's a new way of approaching road safety, which came over from Sweden, but it has been around in the United States for a while, and it's focusing on preventing traffic deaths of all road users through design mostly, but also through policies and some other measures. It basically expects humans to make mistakes, both drivers and pedestrians and cyclists, but helping through design to make these mistakes not deadly, for example, by lowering speed limits or have other mitigation measures that if a crash occurs, that it doesn't necessarily lead to a fatality. So there are different ways of approaching it, and it's what we call systematic safety, like looking at the corridors that we know have safety issues and making systematic improvements to prevent future crashes. So we use the term systematic safety instead of Vision Zero, because Vision Zero is a branded concept that the name has had its challenges as well, but the first start towards that is to figure out what do we need, how do we even approach that. So the program plan would look into we basically create a work plan for the county and how to work towards these goals. So the plan itself is not going to solve all the issues or provide all the answers on how Fairfax County can prevent all traffic fatalities in the future, but set structures into place that are currently not there that would help us reach that goal and create those programs that we need, and also look at funding. So determine how much funding is needed to run such a program.
Nicole?
Mhm.
Supervisor Lusk, I just want to add one quick comment here, and I'll say I appreciate the work that's being done specifically around this issue. And I'll note to those who probably aren't aware on this call, but there was a board matter that Supervisor Alcorn, who was the Hunter Mill District Supervisor, and I sponsored last year on pedestrian and bicycle safety. And part of the impetus for that was both of us saw some alarming numbers, more specifically on the Route 1 corridor in the beginning of 2020, where we had a number of deaths. And I'll say, I know, this is a tough thing, and we've got to figure out how we can make that roadway a little bit safer. And I know that staff are working on some recommendations, and also I'm very appreciative of the work that's being done, because I think there are things that we can do, and whether that's improving crosswalks or looking at the use of technology and other methods. And I'll be really keen on seeing what some of the additional recommendations that come back. But I think the hard thing is these are unfortunate losses of lives, particularly on the Route 1 corridor, where people are crossing it kind of in a mid-block situation. And I know that in the past, there's been some kind of focus on the individuals who've done that. And I think, we have to get beyond kind of blaming the victim and looking at ways to make the roadway safer. And I'm just, again, delighted that we're undertaking this effort. And I think it's going to be helpful in reducing these deaths and making these roadways safer. So look forward to hearing the recommendations. And then the last point I'll make is on the question regarding the bicycle racks. One of the things that we can do also, and I'm committed to this, is when we're looking at future developments in the district, we can ask for offers where appropriate to help us program those facilities on private property. But we also might be able to think about how we might be able to extend a proffer that might help us with some of our public facilities too. So thinking about the parks and other assets that we have in the community, and seeing if there's some way to get some additional bike racks at those locations. So I will certainly be keeping that in mind as I work on our future projects here in the district. So thank you, and appreciate the opportunity to add those comments.
Thank you so much.
Nicole, we have a follow-up comment regarding the bike parking. It says it would be great if parking guidelines could be retroactive to the older shopping centers. And then I have another comment. There are many broken links in sidewalks/shared paths. In many places, it is difficult to go from one neighborhood to another nearby neighborhood because sidewalks or paths do not connect. Completing sidewalks and paths across these short distance voids would greatly improve the ability for pedestrians and cyclists to get around.
Thank you for that comment. Any other thoughts on the future of Fairfax County? What would you like to see?
I have another one. Achieving more streets that are complete will require reallocating car travel lanes to these other purposes. Yet VDOT's level of service and 85th percentile rules prevent this in most cases, even in residential neighborhoods near the metro and outside schools, where lots of people are walking and biking. How will the county make more complete streets without taking more private property? And if VDOT, in most cases, won't reduce car lanes?
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's a balance in and really depending on the location. So the county has worked with VDOT successfully to put some roads on what we call a road diet to convert underutilized travel lanes to bicycle space, and that's an interim condition. It's possible to turn these converted spaces into permanent active transportation spaces or a tree buffer with a capital project down the road. So doing it with striping is a quick and easy way to do so. If you're looking at corridors that have so much car traffic that that's not an easy, we can't necessarily take available space away. Sometimes it's possible to make the wider travel lanes more narrow. So many of our travel lanes were designed to older standards, which had the width a little bit wider. So there's some opportunities to get some inches here and there. There are medians that could potentially be converted and reallocated. So there's some room even in our busiest corridors that we may not be able to turn a travel lane into active transportation infrastructure. So really it's a case by case look. The activity centers do often have bigger redevelopments that provide some extra right of way to the development of the active transportation facilities or the landscaping panels that provide the street trees. On-street parking is always something that could be looked at. It's of course very popular and needed in many areas, but sometimes it's underutilized, and we have converted on-street parking to bike lanes in the past as well. Again, I guess on a case-by-case basis. But there are many opportunities. We do have a lot of right-of-way available in the county, unlike an older or historic city that is really very constrained. But we do have to do it in a context-sensitive way. And if you're interested in taking the survey, actually some of the survey questions as part of this project asked about how would you divide up the right-of-way. If you had to prioritize, what would you prioritize? So that type of information we will take back, and that will influence our planning efforts in the future. If there's no more questions or comments, we can move on. And there's again time at the end of this meeting to further discuss some of these topics as well. Okay, so let's wrap up the project discussion with a just look at the priorities that we came up with so far when we were thinking about what do we want to achieve with this ActiveFairfax planning opportunity that we have. And again, we agree with you that the connectivity and the comfort of the network is key, and that's not just sidewalks but also the bikeways and trails, and that those facilities should be enjoyable and usable by people of all ages and abilities. Then we talked about the safer design facilities for pedestrians through policy, but as well as setting some design recommendations to enhance the crossings, the complete streets approach in places where we currently don't have those recommendations, but also look at the policies and laws both on the local and the state level to see where we could potentially change the language of the law, make recommendations through our legislative platform to improve the safety and the comfort of walking and biking. For example, we currently the Code of Virginia doesn't necessarily have its own definition for cyclists. So if a cyclist is on a road, they're a vehicle. If they're on the sidewalk, they're pedestrian. But what are they when they are in basically a off-street bike lane? So those are kind of the questions where the law has to catch up with the engineering practice. And if that definition is not there, there's a ripple effect of what are the kind of signals we can use, for example, like the bicycle signal is not something we can use right now because that definition is not there. So there are small changes that we can work towards through our legislative platform, and it's part of this project. And then we talked about the programs and initiatives that we would like to develop and look into to see what has worked in other places, what really does encourage people to walk and bike more often, take advantage of the facilities we have, and the new ones we're going to build in the future. We started engagement as part of this project, and the meeting tonight is a really important part of it because we really want to hear from the community. Your experience being out and about every day is so important for us to know about because the county is big and it's really varies. We have some urban sections, we have suburban sections, we have rural sections, some are older, some are newer. So hearing from the local communities about what they experience being out and about and what they would like to see in the future is essential for us to get it right, because staff doesn't know it all. We do get around, but not in every nook and cranny of the county. So we created this community survey and hope that as many people as possible fill it out. So it asks a good amount of questions on, your active transportation experience, but also, what would you like to change? How would you prioritize funding, for example? Or, again, you can see how you would like to split up the right of way. What's important to you? What parts of the street or the complete streets are important to you? So here's the link to the survey. We can also post it in the chat, and it's on the website as well. And the survey is available in 8 languages. So please share with your neighbors, with your family, and it will be open until May 1st. Then also on the website is a interactive feedback map. And that map allows you to zoom into your neighborhood and put points of specific locations where there's an issue. There's a barrier of some sort, anything from missing crosswalk marking to, or even a missing curb ramp, to there is, a gap in the sidewalk, or all of those issues that prevent you from getting around, walking or biking or hiking. But also this map allows you to tell us where you would like to go. What are your destinations that you would like to get to using active transportation? And if you're really interested in the future, not just filling those gaps in the curb ramps and improving the crosswalks, but thinking about the bigger plan of trails, particularly in bike lanes. So the current comprehensive plan already calls for sidewalks on both sides of the road all over the county. So that doesn't necessarily need to be mapped out, but not every road has a trail, not every road has a bikeway, so that we actually need to map out. And we do have a pretty comprehensive network from the Trails Plan and the Bicycle Master Plan that provides a good starting point, but we know it's not reaching every destination. It doesn't necessarily connect to every school or every park or every transit station or bus stop. So take a look if you're interested and see if there are gaps in the planned network. So, and if you want to, build something in the future that is more than a sidewalk, or particularly if it's a trail connection that's not along a road, it will need to be in the plan for us to fund it. It's very easy to use. You can click on the map, zoom in, click on a map, and draw a line, and then tell us, should this be a paved trail or natural surface trail? So hiking is also as part of this. We're playing a hiking network because the plan was actually, the Carnival's Trails plan was actually originated in the Parks Department. So it has a lot of recreational kind of hiking trails in there as well that are now being updated as part of this effort. So if you're interested in some of that you will be able to add your own links to kind of suggest for future consideration. And again, those abilities to provide your feedback are open until May 1st this year. And then the next step for the project team will be to take all this feedback and develop a vision for active transportation, as well as specific goals and key outcomes for the county. And that document will be taken, will be available for public review. So you can take a look at what the outcome of this round of engagement is, and provide you feedback on what we thought we heard. And then we will take that those vision and goals to the Board of Supervisors for approval in June, which will conclude the phase 1 this summer. And this ends the formal presentation part of this meeting. Again, if you would like to go to our website to learn more about this project or access the survey or maps, please go to the link fairfaxcounty.gov/transportation/bike-walk/ActiveFairfax. You can also reach us via email at activefairfax@fairfaxcounty.gov, or you can send us mail to our office at 4050 Legato Road in Fairfax, Virginia. So we are opening now for the just open-ended discussion. So if you have anything you would like to share on any topic related to the project or active transportation, please use the Q&A window or raise your hand if you're on a computer, or press *3 if you're on the phone.
Nicole, we have a few comments. The first is, I am concerned about a piecemeal approach, only changing certain streets in certain circumstances. Every street in every community needs connectivity and safety.
Thank you. That's a good comment. So I'm sorry if that what it sounded like. So what I was trying to say is that every street has a different context. So a one-size-fits-all approach is not necessarily working well for Fairfax County. It may work well in a city or in the countryside, but we have such a diversity of contexts. Again, the urban, the suburban, and the rural, that the different type of context needs a different type of facility. So that's all it is. So creating a framework that will give us a toolkit of what is the best facility, but it would still mean that all the roads that needed would qualify for getting that type of treatment in the future. So the prioritization of that implementation is up to, of course, the Board of Supervisors, but we will provide a set of recommendations based on priority locations from an equity perspective. Where do we see or expect most of the demand for these facilities? Where do we need to, start looking of installing these facilities first in order to serve the greatest need and get, the most use before we go into more maybe remote areas, which there's not that much, demand for this type of infrastructure. Does that answer your question?
Nicole, this is Tom. Maybe I can also weigh in on this one. I think we would agree that it would be nice if we could address all of the bike and pedestrian needs in the county at one time. But the practical kind of reality is that what we're doing in many cases is trying to retrofit the built environment that has developed over probably, in some cases 40 or 50 years. And as certain neighborhoods in the county developed, bike and pedestrian was not the major focus. And so most of what we're doing is trying to retrofit the existing environment. And that takes a lot of time and a lot of money to do that. And unfortunately, we don't have the resources to do a comprehensive review of all the streets in Fairfax County. And so, as Nicole mentioned, trying to prioritize those in activity centers, around schools, around public buildings and parks, things like that, where we know there are going to be users. Not to say that there aren't other places in the county that should be retrofitted. We believe that there are, but we do have to kind of look practically at what we can accomplish with the dollars that we have available.
We have a question. How many non-county people attended tonight's meeting? And I have a count right now of 5. And then another comment, which says, I just joined, so I'm not sure if this has been mentioned already, but I think Fairfax County could do better in the area of streetlights. Some streets don't have streetlights, and having streetlights would make it safer for both pedestrians and drivers.
Yeah, that's a really hot topic, and thank you for bringing that up. So I believe the Board of Supervisors has expressed an interest in approaching that topic in a comprehensive way as well. So as part of the ActiveFairfax transportation plan, we will not be able to create a lighting plan. We can provide some recommendations of what type of lighting, pedestrian scale lighting, particularly locations where it wouldn't make sense. But you know, the issue of retrofitting an entire county with street lights will need to be done in a separate comprehensive effort that is being discussed, not decided yet, but I'm not sure if Tom would like to speak to that as well.
Sure. So this is an area of concern for the Board of Supervisors. And so there is a staff working group that's been established to start delving into this. And we will be having an initial discussion with the full board as part of a future committee meeting sometime this summer to kind of get the ball rolling on streetlights, because it is a challenge, an ongoing challenge, and one that does need to be addressed. So the board has initiated an effort to look at this, but just as with the bike and pedestrian facilities themselves, retrofitting the built environment is going to be a challenge. But there is work started to try and address or begin to address streetlights.
And Nicole, can I just jump in here as well? I appreciate this issue, and I'll say this is one that's pretty close and dear to me as well, recognizing that we certainly do need to have a plan for additional street lighting across, you know, Lee District and the rest of the county. Question is, are we able to, I'm assuming we could include in the survey comments if there are places that we think streetlights are necessary that they're not in place today? Would this be something we can certainly get some feedback and input from the community on?
Yeah, so are you asking if the public provides this type of feedback that we can pass it on? Yes, sure.
Okay. I think that'll be helpful. Thank you.
I have another comment. It says, I just want to say thank you for sharing this information. The lack of sidewalks and streetlights on some roads has bothered me since moving to Fairfax County. And I'm really happy to see that we can provide feedback on specific streets where we'd like to see sidewalks. And I have another one.
Thank you so much.
Food for thought comment. Paraphrasing Dr. Robin Mazunder. I hope I didn't butcher that. When you walk or bike, does the built environment in your community give you a feeling of dignity? Or does it make you feel neglected, discouraged, even abused? Does walking and biking sometimes give you a sense of harm or abuse? Sadly, I feel undignified and in harm's way a lot when I travel outside of a personal car in the county.
Thank you for sharing that.
That's all the comments and questions I see currently.
I don't see anyone having their hand up. So if you can think of any other question you would like to ask or any other comments, please feel free to email me at ActiveFairfax@fairfaxcounty.gov. But I do encourage you, please, to check out the survey as well, fill it out, share your thoughts, encourage others to share your thoughts as well. The maps, as was mentioned, is very helpful to actually address specific issues in a geographic manner. It's hard to describe. It's sometimes easier to go to a map and highlight where the issue is. And you can upload photos as well. You can even if somebody else has discovered the same issue, mention it, you can basically vote for that issue or like that issue. So you'll see when you go to the map that some suggestions or issues have 14 people that agreed with that, and that's interesting for us to kind of see where some of the visible issues are that a lot of people agree with. But again, thank you so much for attending today and for your great questions and comments. I really appreciate your feedback, and I'm not sure if anyone else would like to say a few words before you let everyone go, but again, thank you for attending today.
I'll just say thank you as well. This was very informative, and look forward to seeing the final results when they come back later this summer. Really important projects. So thank you for your doing that, Nicole, as well.
Thank you. That will conclude today's meeting. Thank you again for joining. And again, the recording of this meeting will be posted to the website, the ActiveFairfax Transportation Plan website, tomorrow or the day after.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.